Another of the Premier's monthly press conferences. We are indeed delighted this morning to have in our presence Dr. Judy Nisbet, the chair of the Nevis Task Force. Dr. Nisbet, thank you for gracing us with your presence. The format for this morning's press conference is as per usual. The Premier will make his statement, and you, the members of the press corps, will be given the opportunity to ask your question. In doing so, you are kindly asked to first give your name and the organization/agency which you represent. Please put your phone on silent, turn them off, or put them on vibrate if you can. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming to the podium the Honorable Premier of Nevis, Mark A.G. Brantley.
Hello, good morning, everyone, and thank you all for coming to one of these, and yet another of these press conferences. I am delighted to be here with you, and thankful that we were able to start on time. I thank the members of the press. I thank Dr. Nisbet, Dr. Judy Nisbet, who, as we know, has been leading the task force effort here in Nevis in the fight against COVID-19, and we continue to commend her and the team for the excellent work that they've been doing. Thank you, Dr. Nisbet, for being here with us. Let me start where I normally start, by congratulating our people who have done well, and in this case I want to congratulate Mrs. Giselle Clark-Theron. She has become the new honorary consul for Spain to St. Kitts and Nevis, and she would have brought her credentials on the 9th of October 2020 in a small ceremony that we had. Of course, that was a couple of weeks ago, but this is the first press conference since then. Giselle is a classmate of mine. In fact, we went through our entire high school, sixth form, and university lives together, because she's also a lawyer, and she would have graduated at the same time as I did. And it was, if you will, a good moment, a very proud moment, that I, as foreign minister, could have received from her credentials for her to be the new honorary consul of Spain to St. Kitts and Nevis. So we welcome Mrs. Giselle Clark-Theron and congratulate her for this significant appointment. Let me also congratulate our own Montpelier Plantation and Beach Resort for being recognized as number 14 on the Condé Nast Reader's Choice Awards Top 40 Resorts in the Caribbean, and number 20 in the top resorts in the Caribbean and the Atlantic. We know that Nevis has several bespoke properties, and Montpelier Plantation is one of the best, and so we congratulate them as well. Let me also congratulate Mr. Kelso Clark. He's a young man who's going places. He was granted a scholarship to pursue a master's degree in tropical agriculture at the National Ping Tung University of Science and Technology in Taiwan. Mr. Clark is presently employed with us at the Agricultural Department as a livestock extension officer. So, Mr. Clark, if you're listening, congratulations to you and to your family, and thanks, as always, to the government and people of Taiwan for affording our people, particularly our young people, these opportunities. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a bit of ground that I would want to cover. Let me start with tourism. Of course, our borders reopen in 2 days' time. That is on the 31st of October. We are told that our first flights, international flights, American Airlines and British Airways, were scheduled to arrive on the 7th of November. So even though we open on 31st October, those first international flights, we are told, at this point anyway, should come on the 7th of November. And of course, this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where our systems are going to be tested, because for the first time, our borders are going to be opened for in the last 8 months or thereabouts. Of course, we closed our borders back in March, if you recall, and this will be the first reopening since then. And we are hopeful that all the preparations that we have done would have gone well. The Nevis economy has been battered, perhaps even more so than St. Kitts, because of the absence of visitors. We depend very heavily, as you know, on tourism. It's the mainstay of our economy, and so for the past 8 months, our dominant engine has been shut down. And that has resulted, of course, in a lot of dislocation, a lot of economic chaos here on the island, a lot of people who are out of work. I believe the number at Four Seasons, our significant employer here, is just over 280 individuals have lost their jobs as a direct result of this pandemic and the consequence of our borders being closed. So we recognize that we have had to do a delicate balancing act between the safety and security of our people and, of course, the need of our people to earn. and the ability of them to feed themselves and their family. And I keep saying, because we take, and my usual example is a taxi driver, and we take the taxi man who has his little bus to pay for. He relies on his taxi for the support of his family, and he has been out of work for 8 months, no income. The bank is calling him, you owe us for your taxi, the rent is due, the food is due, the school fees are due. What does he do? And so we understand very much that the government is in an acutely uncomfortable space of seeking to satisfy, on the one hand, our need to be safe and secure in our health, and on the other hand, our need to work and to earn so that we can feed ourselves. And that is why it has taken this long to put in place a regime now and a set of protocols that we are hopeful will work once the border reopens. We have done a tremendous amount of work at the RLB, but since this is my press conference and I'm talking specifically about Nevis, we have done a tremendous amount of work here at the Van Samer International Airport, and we are advised by the good people at the Nevis ANC Ports Authority that they will be ready for the opening on the 31st of October. And so what are the protocols? I'm sure you would have heard them, but just very quickly. We have various categories of travelers, but let me deal with the two perhaps most significant categories. The categories are the bubble, Caribbean bubble countries, that's what it's called. And those countries currently are Anguilla, Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, Dominica, Grenada, Montserrat, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. That is subject to change, as of course we monitor what's happening in those countries. But if you're from any of those countries that I've listed, and you have been there for the last 21 days, then you can come into St. Kitts and Nevis with a COVID test done within 72 hours by being screened when you arrive at the airport. And once you are not showing any symptoms of any kind, you have a negative test done 72 hours before you come, you're screened at the airport, you are then free to go about your business. You would have to download the COVID app that is available, and then you're free to integrate into the community. And the idea there is really that these people are considered low risk, because in their own countries, there has not been any community spread and any significant infections. And so those countries that I've listed are now included in the Caribbean bubble, but they can change. Now, if you're from outside that bubble, that is, you're coming from some other place in the Caribbean, or you're coming from the United States, you're coming from Canada, you're an international traveler from the UK, then again you must do this 72-hour test, at least within this past 72 hours before you take your flight. That test must be negative. Once you land, you're screened. You're not tested again, but you're screened. And you are then allowed to go to one of the designated hotels. Those hotels, as I understand it, let me just make sure that I'm entirely accurate, that the hotels that you are allowed to stay at in that first batch, if you will, that first phase, are the Koi Resort on St. Kitts, Park Hyatt on St. Kitts, the St. Kitts Marriott Resort, and the Royal St. Kitts Hotel. On Nevis, there are two hotels designated, the Four Seasons Resort and the Paradise Beach Resort. The Oahu Resort was hitherto designated, but that is no longer the case, and the Oahu Resort now can accept bubble, Caribbean bubble clientele. The other hotels on Nevis that can accept Caribbean bubble clientele would be the Hermitage, Montpelier, Golden Rock, Nisbet Plantation, Mount Nevis, and Pinnis Beach Hotel. And so the smaller hotels, if you will, can accept travelers from those countries that I have identified. And let me just identify them again. Those in the Caribbean bubble at this point in time are Anguilla, Antigua Barbuda, Barbados, Dominica, Grenada, Montserrat, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So if you're coming from any of those, you take a test 72 hours, at least 72 hours before, you land, you're screened, you download the COVID app, and then you're free to go about your business. If you are staying at a hotel, then you can stay at any of the smaller inns on the island of Nevis, Wally, Hermitage, Montpelier, Golden Rock, Nisbet, Mount Nevis, Paradise Beach or Penny's Beach Hotel. That's the Caribbean bubble. If you're an international traveler that is coming from a country outside that bubble, then you must test within 72 hours. When you land, you are screened. If you have no symptoms, you can then go to one of the designated hotels in the first phase. Again, those are Park Hyatt, Koi, Marriott, and the Royal St. Kitts Hotel on St. Kitts, and on Nevis, the Four Seasons Resort or Paradise Beach. So those are the 6 hotels that are open to receive international guests in the first phase. You will come in, you will be screened. If you have no symptoms, of course, you would have a negative COVID test before you arrive. You will download the app. You're then free to go to your resort. At your resort, you'll be free to roam about your resort. So you'll be free to use all the resources and all the amenities at the resort. So if you're at the Four Seasons, you can use the restaurants, you can go to the spa, you can go and play golf, you can do whatever for the first 7 days of your stay. So if your stay is up to 7 days, then you are free to roam about your resort and enjoy all the amenities at your resort for the first 7 days. If your stay is beyond 7 days, then on the 7th day, you will be tested. A PCR test will be done locally. And if the results of that PCR test are negative, then you will be allowed to move about the island in what is called a bubble. So you'll be allowed through your tour desk at the hotel to book certain designated tours with certain designated taxi operators, as the case may be. And the idea there is to keep you in what is referred to now as a bubble so that you're not interacting generally. Put differently, if after 7 days you're tested, on the 8th day you decide that you want to go, I don't know, to the Bath Stream in Nevis to see the Bath Hotel, and that is included as a designated area, then you'll take a designated taxi and go there. You will not be able to just ask the taxi man to drop you in town so you could stroll around and pick up some knickknacks in town. So it will be a very controlled experience between day 7 and 14. If you're staying now up to as long as 14 days, on your 14th day you're tested again. And if that test again is negative, you're then free to move about the country as normal. So you can go anywhere you want to go. So what we've introduced is a sort of tiered and phased approach to people coming in. It is different to what we see elsewhere in the region, but it is what our technical team has come up with, and it is what we shall go with when we reopen our borders. Is it going to work? We pray to God it does, because we feel that it is the best compromise that we could have achieved, which achieves some measure of safety and at the same time some measure of normalcy being restored to our local economy. The next set of people, of course, are those who are coming as returning nationals or people who have work permits, CSME, single market, Caribbean single market and economy persons, etc. They will also have to do the entry form. Oh, by the way, I should have said that all persons coming have to complete the entry form. Forgive me. And you can get the entry form at covid19.gov.kn. That is the website for the entry form. They must submit a negative PCR test as well, same 72 hours before travel from an accredited laboratory. They must undergo the same health screening when they land at the airport. And they will be required, everybody will be required to download the SKN COVID-19 app. Following the screening, the travelers will be allowed to enter the Federation. Now, these are citizens coming home, residents coming back, CSME, work permit holders, etc. They'll be allowed to enter the Federation. They will then be transported to a government-approved site for quarantine, and the period of quarantine is 14 days. So that has not changed. They will stay in quarantine for 14 days. The cost on Nevis is $500 US for quarantine at the government site. And the government site is at Potworks. $500 US, which is inclusive of the PCR test, the cost for the PCR test, which you will do at the end of the 14 days. So you're coming, if you're a returning national, you are asked to go to the government quarantine site where you can pay US $500 for the duration of your stay, inclusive of the PCR test at the end of the stay. Now, you can also opt to stay at Oali, which has been designated as a quarantine site as well, and you will pay Oali whatever their daily rate might be. Some prefer to stay there than to stay at the government-controlled site at Potworks. OALI has been offering that service for some time now. And so that is the position in relation to returning nationals. Now, of course, there are some people who have villas here, they have homes here, and they say, listen, I am a returning national, or I'm a returning resident, or I'm a regular visitor with a home here, and I do not want to stay at OALI. I do not want to stay at Potworks. I want to stay in my own home. And so we have another system in place where your home can be pre-approved. So it's a certified, if you will. And what happens is our team goes out, they inspect your residence if you make that request. So you say, I have my home in Montpelier, I want to stay at my own home. They will make that inspection, ensure that your home can accommodate you if you're in quarantine. For example, if other people are living at that home, you might need to have separate quarters, self-contained apartment with bathroom and everything where you could be separate from the rest of the household. Many people in Nevis, we have, of course, a large expat community, and they have homes here which are currently empty that they want to come back to. Many of them spend their winters here, and that has been a long tradition here on the island of Nevis. And so those homes will be pre-inspected, pre-approved, and then those individuals can quarantine at their own home. However, there is a requirement that they have security, and that security be available 24 hours for the duration of the quarantine. And they have to pay for that security. Now, some have complained, naturally. They don't want to pay. They think the cost is too much. And my answer to those who are complaining about the cost, you can go to Potworks and stay for $500 US, all inclusive. You can go to OALI, which is a cheaper alternative than the security at your own home. But if you opt to stay in your own villa, then you have to have private security, and you have to pay for that security. Now, let me make it pellucid. This is not money that's coming to the NIA. The government isn't getting anything out of this in terms of a fee. Some people seem to think that it's the government that's charging people money to stay in their own home. I have had that complaint come to me. No, it is a payment for the private security. Why private security? Because the police doesn't have the manpower to make themselves available for that purpose. And so the security firms have been trained and asked to offer that service. And you're asked to pay for that service. Now, I'm told that the security firms vary between $18 and $20 an hour, and it's 24 hours for 14 days at least. So you do the math, and it works out to, I think, about $6,000, $7,000 EC dollars for 14 days. So some people have complained, but again, I say they have other alternatives that they can use if they opt to stay in their own home, at their own villa. Once it's pre-approved, they can do so, but with security. Now, why security? Some say, I am not going to breach quarantine, so I don't need any security. Well, all I can say is we've heard that story before. And way back in March, if you remember, when we first learned that COVID was descending on all of us, we had a position where people were asked to quarantine at home. And the complaints came fast and furious that people were seen out in public, playing basketball, going to the supermarket when they were supposed to be in quarantine. So our people were not disciplined in relation to the quarantine, and as a consequence, the decision now has been taken that we cannot trust anymore people saying that they were quarantined. We must instead ensure that they have security. And that is really how this came about. I know some people say they're responsible and they wouldn't break quarantine, but we can't take that risk because the difficulties would be far too great for us as an island. So I'm sure there might be questions, and when they come, I'll try my best to answer them. But those are the protocols as I understand them for the reopening at this point in time. Now, as also part of the reopening, we have embarked federally, but again, let me focus on Nevis, on a widespread training, COVID training and sensitization for all stakeholders in the tourism industry. So, Nevis has thus far, the numbers say we have already trained 1,300 persons in a first training that was done, and then we've trained 294 in a phase 2, which is a train the trainer. What we've basically done is said to businesses, send someone, and we're going to do a more in-depth training with that individual who can then go back to your establishment and provide ongoing training in COVID protocols. Now today, in fact, starting at 3:30 this afternoon, we are going to have on the island of Nevis our final training and sensitization session. It will be at NEPAC, the Nevis Performing Arts Center, and it is important that those who missed all the training that has occurred before attend. So this is for the taxi operators, the hospitality people, restaurateurs, whoever might have missed before. It's important that you attend it now. Why? Because only businesses with a travel-approved seal, that is, the Ministry of Tourism and the Nevis Tourism Authority or Nevis will issue a Nevis travel-approved seal. It's a stamp of approval that says that this business and the employees of this business have gone through the requisite training and the business is up to standard. And so that is important for you to operate, and that is why we're encouraging the people to go out and be trained. So in addition to these 1,300 plus 294 who have been trained in the trainer series, we are asking individuals to take advantage of the last opportunity, which is today, to go out and access this training. This is all, of course, being done in preparation, ladies and gentlemen, for the opening of our borders. Let me segue very quickly to the Ministry of Health. As you know, the spotlight has been on health due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and we continue to be very pleased in terms of advances that we're making on the island in relation to health and healthcare. The Ministry of Health and the government are pleased to announce that the salary upgrade promised to our nursing staff has been delivered. I say that early so that the observer doesn't ask me when it's going to be paid. It has been paid. Some 70-plus staff members will receive payment retroactive from June 1st, 2020. Our nurses continue to be an integral part of the delivery of health care, and we feel that it is important that we adequately remunerate them, particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic. So let me say to our nurses, thank you for your service. Thank you for your patience. We have promised to adjust some anomalies in your pay for a long time, and we've finally now been able to deliver. And I'm grateful to them, and I'm grateful that the good people in finance have done what they needed to do to ensure that our nurses are now on a regularized footing in relation to their remuneration. We have also commenced the construction of a garage to house the 2 ambulances that were recently purchased by Social Security and the Nevis Island Administration. You would recall that we had a ceremony several weeks ago, and for the very first time in Nevis's history, we have 2 new ambulances at once at a global cost of just over $176,000. We continue, of course, to ask the operators of that equipment to operate them sensibly and to ensure that we continue to have the use of these ambulances for as long as possible. Let me thank Mr. Peter Curry of David Curry Limited for donating 2 oxygen concentrator nebulizer combo and 3 thermoscan machines to the Ministry of Health in support of the fight against COVID-19. Mr. Curry has indicated, and we know that he has a long-standing business relationship with the people of Nevis, and he wished to make this contribution. And Mr. Curry, we are very grateful to you and say thank you. The eye care program in Nevis is now world-renowned. Doctors come here, specialists come here twice a year normally to deliver state-of-the-art eye care to the people of Nevis and the wider federation, because many from St. Kitts are now accessing eye care in Nevis. Sadly, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, they were unable to travel this year to come to us. But they were able to deliver through telemedicine care to some 206 persons. And those 206 persons were checked, their vision, intraocular pressure, and they performed something called an optical coherence tomography, OCT scan. Results were sent to the team in the United States via a secure platform that could only be accessed by the doctors there and the nurses. And assessments were made and care was provided. So even though they couldn't travel, we were still able to provide care for some 206 persons. As we continue to promote healthy lifestyles and encourage our people to eat healthy, buy local, eat what we grow, exercise, stay away from irresponsible behavior, all of these things, the SKN Move Nevis chapter successfully hosted its Half Island Road Relay Walk on the 10th of October. 21 teams and 70-plus individuals registered for this event. Team Nevlec registered 4 teams in total. There was also a minister's team, a prominent secretary's team, and a team from the mental health unit. And I would like to say for the record that the minister's team did very well and did not come last. We didn't come first either, but we did not come last. The Half Island Road Relay was a collaborative effort between the Ministry of Health and the National Weight Loss Campaign, which focuses on physical activity, the importance of keeping fit and active as one of the ways of reducing the risk of NCDs such as diabetes and hypertension. Now, there's another good opportunity coming up, a bike relay scheduled for November, Sunday the 15th of November, 2020, and registration for that is now open. Gender Affairs, they would have commenced their second business boot camp training on the 19th of October. Some 13 businesses with 15 persons registered to take part in the 6-week training exercise. They also would have convened on the 21st of October a series on the topic budgeting in times of financial strain. The Ministry of Health through the Gender Department continues to encourage women in particular in small businesses and entrepreneurship, especially during these challenging times. And just so members of the press are aware, you would have heard me repeatedly speak about a $5 million fund that we created with the assistance of the Taiwanese government. And that fund was to provide seed money to women to start businesses and to youth individuals under 35. And the idea really was a collaboration with Gender Affairs, that they will provide through a boot camp training for people, how to write their business plans, how to do advertising and marketing and those types of things. We want more young people and more women involved in business and to develop their entrepreneurial skills. Now, I am told that a majority of that $5 million is still available. The last report I got suggested that only about $600,000 or thereabouts had been dispersed. And so it means that more of our people need to step forward and to take advantage of this opportunity. The money is being made available. I believe it is at 4% interest, and there are very generous terms that are being offered to small businesses. There's a ceiling of 100,000 EC dollars. So really it is for those who are doing a micro business, a small business, and I'm told that many of the about 14 persons that have taken advantage of the fund thus far are doing micro business. They want $20,000, they want $30,000. Only very few, I'm told, have actually asked for the maximum of 100,000. But I make the clarion call again to our people in these difficult times to take advantage of these opportunities that the government is seeking to create to allow you to have a small business and to earn, to put your business skills, your entrepreneurship, and your innovation to work and to earn. Switching very quickly to a very important topic of cancer. Cancer continues to be a non-communicable disease that is wreaking havoc in our population. Breast cancer in particular was looked at for the month of October as Breast Cancer Month. The Ministry of Health would have partnered with the Pink Lily Foundation and would have embarked on a number of activities to create awareness of the disease and to promote the importance of screening. The activities included a walk, breast cancer screening at the health centers, a mobile screening, and a forum. During the forum, members of the Nevis Maternal Health Fund made a presentation of a breast model to the Health Promotion Unit for use in the awareness and promotion activities. We thank Pink Lily and the Nevis Maternal Health for their continued partnership in the fight against breast cancer. Again, ladies and gentlemen, let me appeal to our people. We are told that cervical cancer, for example, is preventable and can, if it's caught early, be cured, be dealt with effectively. How do we know from an early stage? By women taking advantage of the pap smears that are available at our clinics, all around the island, you can have pap smears done for free. We continue to encourage our people to do the necessary, to take control of their health, to know their status. So pap smears are available, an effective tool in the fight against cervical cancer. We encourage women and men to engage in breast exams. They can do it themselves. If they find a lump or they find something unusual, then they go and they get professional analysis done. We encourage women to do the mammogram that's available. And the reason I include men, they say men don't have breasts, they have chest. But men also get breast cancer or chest cancer, whatever you want to call it. Women get breast cancer, men can also get that as well. And so if you notice any lumps, engage in examining yourself, but also get regular checkups and get your mammogram done. These are measures that can save lives. We have been looking at the HPV vaccine, and at some point that might be introduced fully across the Federation. Also, a proven way of dealing with cervical cancer, which we know is triggered by the HPV virus. I am asking our people to do what we know we can do. The government is trying its very best. We have put things in place that are not in place in other countries. Even in some of our regional neighbors, they don't have the extent of public health care that we have available here. But our people continue not to take advantage of the opportunities. And as we say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. As I like to put it, $1 of prevention is worth $1 million of cure. We have the prostate screening that is done. Let me thank Dr. Dwayne Thwaites and his team again, because that has become an annual event here, which sees sometimes as many as 600 men being screened for prostate cancer. That, again, if detected early, can be dealt with effectively. So I'm imploring our people, please, let us do the necessary to protect and preserve our own health. Let me segue and talk a bit about the Ministry of Works. I am very proud, and I had reason to comment recently, that Nevis has one of the best water distribution networks in the entire region. One of the best. I know we take it for granted. But successive governments on the island of Nevis, going back many, many years, have invested heavily in water. Water production and water distribution. And we have not stopped. We have had an over $30 million CDB-funded project on Nevis to improve water distribution. Those who drive occasionally up into the hills, you will see some brand new tanks erected all across Nevis. Many would have complained and said they see the roads being dug up and a lot of blue pipes being laid. That's a more modern system where we enlarge the pipes, we change various connections, we removed a lot of the old pipes that had been there for decades, and we now have a much more modern water distribution system. Nowhere in Nevis now is out of water. Every part of the island has access to potable water. That, I think, ladies and gentlemen, is a significant achievement for an island this size. One of the problems that we face is the availability of water, because we get our water from underground sources, from wells. And one of the problems has been, of course, that many of the wells are old and are not yielding as much water as they used to. And there's a need, therefore, for us to drill more wells. We had agreed as a cabinet to spend some $10 million and had asked a company called Bead to do that drilling for us. Bead was unable to deliver. And so we've severed that relationship, and we're looking now to see whether we can get other drillers to do some additional wells for us to ensure that we have the capacity to deal with any eventuality in relation to water on the island. In the interim, however, we were aware as a government that we had a well in Hamilton. That's not far from where we are right now. That well was a high-producing well in terms of water, but the water was not up to WHO standards. It had, I am told, certain chemical contents like manganese, which made it unfit for human consumption. And so previous governments had taken the view that that well could not be used, even though the yield from it was quite high. We took a different view, that if the water could be treated and made potable, then we could press that well into use. And I want to thank Minister Spencer Brand, who has championed this particular project, and to say today that the installation and commissioning of the Nevis water filtration or treatment plant at Hamilton has started and is now nearing completion. 2 experts from Lakeshore Engineering out of Georgia in the USA are on the island working at the Hamilton site, and they've been doing so for a little over 2 weeks. Another expert from a company called Adage Technologies, also out of Georgia, is currently in his last week of quarantine at the Wally Beach Resort. He will conduct the final commissioning of the plant and train the Nevis Water Department staff once he's cleared to come out and do what he came to do. We want to thank, of course, these 2 experts who have come and traveled to see us and to perform this important work, even under the circumstances of COVID. We also express thanks and commend the Nevis Integrated Water Resource Management Unit, the Nevis Water Department management and staff, especially the production team, and also the utility companies of Nevelic and Flow and the Ministry of Water Services for the tremendous preparatory work at Hamilton Reservoir site and the Hamilton well to realize this approach to bringing more water into our system very shortly. So I just want to underscore, because I think that's a big news item, that we are going to treat that water through a sophisticated water filtration system to bring it to international standards. And then that water will come into our water supply system. And that will add a tremendous amount of water to our availability on the island. And of course, now we're getting a lot of rain, so water is not so much of an issue. But we recognize, and all of us sitting in this room would recognize, that from time to time, there has been water woes on the island of Nevis, and we're trying to make those a thing of the past. So I congratulate again Minister Brand and his team. I think that is a tremendous step forward. A second point on which I want to congratulate Minister Brand. He came to the cabinet some time ago and he said, you know, we engage in a lot of road construction. And the danger with road construction is the more you build roads, is the more roads people see that need to be built. And so I think that the government has really done a marvelous job in relation to the road network on the island of Nevis. We have built out roads all across the island. Hanley's Road. Over there at Newcastle, Shaw's Road. Stony Grove, Braziers, Brown Hill, Hermitage, all across the island. The island main road from Cotton Ground. We have done a tremendous level of work in terms of roads, major road works we have undertaken. Millions of dollars have been spent. But Minister Brand came to the cabinet and he said to better manage this work and ensure that the work is done in a timely and cost-effective way, that there's a particular piece of equipment called a milling machine. I had not heard of any such prior. We learn a lot in cabinet. And that this milling machine should be purchased by us to better assist public works in more efficiently undertaking road repairs. And so we would have spent that money, invested significantly in this milling machine. I believe it was over $500,000. And that milling machine is now on island. And the department would have trained some 9 persons, mechanics, technicians. They would have engaged in a virtual training session from the 6th to the 9th of October. The training included in-class training, practical work on the machine, and the actual operating of the machine. They did a milling of a small section of road at Prospect Estate. Arrangements will be made to facilitate face-to-face practical training by an expert from the vendor in the near future, where the team will be conducting actual milling work on a small project as part of the final module in the training program. This machine will be used by Public Works to execute much-needed repairs and maintenance of our roadways throughout the island of Nevis. Let me now move quickly to agriculture. Members of the press, we have mandated as a government that agriculture has to be the new thrust for the island of Nevis. We have seen the vulnerability of our economy and our economic model that COVID-19 has exposed. We recognize that when COVID-19 struck us in about March of this year, that we were wholly dependent on imported food to feed ourselves. That if the boats from Miami and Dominica did not come, then there was a real danger to us of not having food to feed ourselves. And so my government took an early decision that food security had now to become a priority. And that if there was any lesson to be learned from COVID-19, it was that we should no longer be wholly dependent on food coming into our ports from abroad. Nevis has fertile land, we have good rainfall, we have an excellent distribution of water, an excellent system of water distribution, and we have people who are capable. And that to us was a combination that said to us we could produce more. And so what did we do? With extremely limited resources, we decided that the stimulus that the NIA would provide would be primarily geared towards agriculture. And so our crop farmers were able to get free seeds for their farms, free seedlings. They got free land preparation. They got free plowing. And land preparation sometimes entailed clearing the land with a backhoe. All of that was provided for free. We went further and provided free fencing wire for our farmers. We provided free fertilizer for them. We provided free water for 6 months for our crop farmers. And we provided even assistance with labor from our workforce at the Department of Agriculture. For our fishers, we provided a roll of fish pot wire for free, and second and subsequent rolls at 50% discount. For our animal farmers, we provided reduced costs at our abattoir. We provided to them free feed through cooperation with EC, GC from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And so we thought that we did as much as we could. And one of the innovations is that these were provided also to what we call backyard farmers. So it wasn't just restricted to commercial farmers. We said if you had a little piece of land in your backyard and you were doing some farming, you too could get free seeds and seedlings and fertilizer. And so we have seen a dramatic increase in production on the island. And a new energy. We see new people, particularly young people, entering agriculture. A lot of people using technology such as shade house, greenhouse, hydroponics, and producing. I can think of Mackie Truss, A1 Farms. I can think of young Richard Paris, who's growing leafy greens. I can think of young Anthony Gager, young Najee Morton. All of these are youngsters who have got, well, let me not include Mackie in the category of youngsters. He might get offended. Mackie plus these youngsters have gotten involved in farming but using technology. And we see others that are preparing significant parcels of land to get into farming in a significant way. We have not stopped there. We have invested heavily in a storage facility at Prospect, which we hope to commission in the next few months. And that facility will allow the government and the marketing division now to be a portal for buying produce from our farmers and having that produce secured. And because, of course, that facility will be refrigerated at different temperatures for different crops and at different temperatures for crops that are at different stages of ripening, that will allow us to waste less food and allow the farmers in Nevis to have a greater assurance that their food will be purchased. We are also, of course, on a relentless campaign to encourage our people to buy local and support our farmers, to eat local because it is a better quality. If you get a tomato from Miami, you have no idea what has gone into that tomato. You get a tomato that is grown here in Nevis, you know that you have a tomato that is organically produced. And so we have been advocating very strongly that there is value in agriculture and that our people should support our local farmers and fishers. We therefore would want to thank all the persons that supported the Ministry of Agriculture week of activities that we had in support of World Food Day 2020. Those activities were simply phenomenal. They were farmers' markets, food demonstrations, and the idea really was to expose our people to the various meal options using local items. The week of activities was celebrated under the theme Grow, Nourish, Sustain Together, and was meant to highlight the sector and the importance of food production on Nevis. We continue to campaign that people must produce, buy local, eat local. I would want to congratulate the Honorable Alexis Jeffers. He won the minister's cook-off. The other person came second. And we had, I think, a good time in exposing the public to what we can do with our local food production. The Department of Agriculture isn't stopping. They're energized. They are hosting a fresh produce sale at the Marketing Division on the Charleston waterfront on Friday, that is tomorrow. Items for sale will be cucumber, honeydew, melons, cantaloupe, pumpkin, banana, sweet potato, papaya, and roast corn. They will also, the Ministry of Agriculture, continue their robust efforts in terms of educating the public and encouraging our farmers to continue to produce. I would want to wish at some time in the future to come to this press conference and announce that in certain food items that Nevis is completely self-sufficient. That is our goal. Let me switch quickly to the Department of Youth, The second cycle of the Youth 12 Impact Program, Awards Program, Ms. Merville Janelle Nisbet has been selected as the awardee in the area of patriotism. Brendan Claxton has been selected as the awardee in the area of education and lifelong learning. Nominations are ongoing in various categories of national importance, and more information can be found on the Department of Youth Facebook page. The 25 Most Remarkable Teens, that is an event that we look forward to each year. I'm told that 8 Nivision teens were selected, and that will come at a date to be announced in St. Kitts. The Commonwealth Secretariat has designated November 2nd to 6th as Youth Workers Week, and in celebration of our youth workers, local activities, including media presentation of all youth groups and an appreciation day, are being planned. A youth workers course will also be launched during the week. Bullying Awareness Day will be celebrated on Friday, October 30th, that's tomorrow. All encouraged to wear white to recognize the day. The virtues of love and respect will be emphasized during the week of the 30th. During the week of October 18th, the Department of Youth partnered with PAHO, WHO, and UNFPA to recognize Adolescent Pregnancy Prevention Week. Some of our teen mothers participated in the week's activities in an effort to enlighten their fellow teens about the challenges of being a teen mother. Still with that ministry, but now switching to social services, Minister Evelyn, the indefatigable, the ever-energized, and what do we say? Energized the bunny, almost, Minister Eric Evelyn. He delivered a feature address at the opening of the Social Services Yes to Success Skill Training and Diversion site located right here at Pinnes on the 27th of October. The site was funded by the Nevis Island Administration. It's already in operation, offering as of 19th October, its 6th annual cycle of training to youth. From the training program for 2020, 19 youth are being trained. Given the COVID-19 impact on employment, the majority are being engaged in a 6-week online digital jobs training targeted to youth throughout the OECS. The organizers have also enrolled several youth in pottery work training as a means of passing on this art form to the younger generation. Young men are also being trained in heavy equipment. Minister Evelyn did admonish the youth to make use of the facility, adding that the ministry, and indeed our administration, epitomizes success and claims to leave no youth behind. The Yes to Success program has also been sanctioned by the OECS consultants and is now an approved diversion site in St. Kitts and Nevis. Our seniors, we have the best seniors program in the region. Our seniors here are involved even in playing steel pan. That is how they are. We have even pageants for our seniors. We have embraced our seniors in a significant way, and what better person than Minister Evelyn, because he has lived a life of service, particularly to our senior citizens. Well, we are observing, and did observe, the International Day of the Elderly on October 1st, and several activities were organized, including small church gatherings, calling program on Vaughan, and to culminate today, Thursday, 29th October, at the Jessops Community Center, there will be a luncheon. Seniors who would have contributed significantly to society will be honored. International Seniors Day was observed under the theme, Pandemics, Did It Change How We Address Age and Aging? Lastly, the Department of Sports, in partnership with the Nevis Netball Association, in an effort to revive netball on Nevis, is hosting a tournament under the title Netball is Back. This is a collaboration intended to revive netball on the island. The tournament will take place at the Brownhill Hard Court commencing on November 7th. 5 teams have signed up to participate, and we are asking the general public to come out and to support. Ladies and gentlemen, I end this part of the press conference with an important announcement. And that is that the island of Nevis and the Ministry of Education have taken a quantum leap forward. When just recently we introduced to the island a member of a new member of our teaching staff, Miss Chai Chen. Miss Chen is from Taiwan. She's a certified teacher of Mandarin. She graduated from Ming Chuang University in 2016, where she majored in teaching Chinese as a second language and applied English. Ms. Chen earned a bachelor's degree in both areas. She has taught in Japan for the last 2 years. Students whom she taught have won the first prize of the Chinese speech contest in Kanto area and Ibaraki Prefecture in Japan. Ms. Chen is assigned split duties between the Charleston Secondary and the Gingerland Secondary Schools. Form 1 students from both schools will benefit from Ms. Chen's expertise in the first instance. Mandarin classes will be expanded to include others after term 1, which ends in December. Now, why is this significant? This is significant because it is a campaign, promise, a manifesto commitment that we would have made, that we would want to expose our children to Mandarin. We know that we teach French and Spanish in our schools, but we have not added any other foreign languages to our curriculum for a very, very long time. Mandarin, and I was very impressed with Ms. Chen because she made a statement when she was introduced that if you spoke Mandarin and English, the 2 now most important languages in the world, that you could communicate with over 2 billion people if you had a mastery of those 2 languages. And naturally we speak English. That's our native language here. And Mandarin, we think, will equip our young people in a way that gives them an edge now in today's world. We cannot ignore that China is an emerging superpower. Many of our local businesses do business with China. We continue to engage with China in terms of business, in terms of development. We continue to engage with Taiwan similarly, and both countries speak Mandarin. And so it was an ambition that we had harbored for a very long time, and thanks to the government and people of Taiwan, we now have embedded with us a Mandarin teacher. And just yesterday it warmed my heart to see 5 or 6 students from first form at the Gingerland Secondary School sending a greeting in Mandarin. I saw a video clip that was sent to me, and it really warmed my heart. They were saying things like ni hao. I don't know what that means. I think it means hello. And they were speaking their first words in Mandarin. And you could only imagine that in the next few years, that these youngsters might be able to speak fluent Mandarin. So for me, that is a significant development for the island of Nevis. This is a pilot project, and we're hopeful that if it goes well, that we can expand it outwards to all the schools, including the primary schools, and certainly to adults, because many adults have also expressed an interest in learning this new language. I will end there and invite any comments or any questions that the press may have. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Monique Washington.
Good morning.
Nevis Observer newspaper. In a past press conference, you would have said that non-compliant businesses will not be able to operate after the borders are open. Has the relevant authorities identified non-compliant businesses ahead of the opening of the borders, and what will happen then? Nevlec. Nevlec has been having some issues, some maintenance work done on their generators, which has caused load shedding. Now, my question is, why is maintenance being done now, being that the borders are being opened in just a couple of days? And does the plant have the capacity to supply the hotels that will be reopening soon, especially with the maintenance work going on right now? My next question concerns the Vance Amri International Airport. Now, during the closure of the borders, the Vance Amri International Airport would have seen a lot of charter flights coming in, persons coming in. And because of that, I guess it would have generated a little bit of cash flow for the airport. Now that the borders are reopening, persons will now be taking advantage of taking commercial flights versus charter flights. And most of these commercial flights will be going to St. Kitts. How do you think this will impact the island's airport? And can you give us an update on geothermal as it relates to power and energy in Nevis? A couple months ago, you said that you were having some nightmares as it relates to the economic status of the NIA's treasury. You said that you were in discussions with the federal government in getting the fair share of the CBI. Has the money from the CBI been forthcoming? And what is the status of the island's treasury now? And with the dismissal of almost 300 persons from the Four Seasons, can the NIA absorb any of these persons?
Well, I think when I'm done answering you, I will say that the press conference is over. I don't know if anything is left. But thank you very much, Monique Washington from The Observer. Let me just try and respond to you. Maintenance at Nevlec, why maintenance now? They have a maintenance schedule. And the major engine, really what is leading to the problem is that we have a major engine there, the newest Wärtsilä engine, and that is due for maintenance. So we could have continued running the engine. I think that was the practice in the past, where it ran for hundreds of hours beyond the stated time for maintenance. We have opted not to do that, but to maintain the engines as maintenance becomes due. So the maintenance on the engine is due, and they've decided that they will undertake that maintenance. Now, what had happened was we had intended to do some load shedding because that engine is the most significant engine. I think that one engine, they're saying, carries about 40% of the load. So when that was taken out, the idea was to do some load shedding, particularly late at nights, so that you could do the maintenance and allow the island to have electricity when it needed it most, during the daytime, naturally, and during the early hours of the evening. The problem was, of course, that some of the older engines, let's bear in mind that some of those engines are up to 30 years old, that some problems developed, and that is why we had the outages that we had. Nevlec has issued a recent press release because I've said to them that they have a duty to keep the public informed, and that recent press release has suggested that at least those unplanned outages have now been corrected, and that all that we need to look forward to now are the scheduled outages, which we will be advised of ahead of time, and that maintenance work is continuing. Now, part of the problem, Ms. Washington, has been COVID, because in the ordinary course, Wärtsilä would have sent in an expert, a technician, to assist with the process, bearing in mind that these were brand new engines that were purchased. But because of COVID and the quarantine requirements, that was not possible. because persons didn't want to come to have to spend 14 days in quarantine before. So it has exacerbated the problem and delayed us in terms of completing what we want to do. Once the main engine is back up and we are back in normal mode at the plant, yes, we can supply all of Nevis, including the hotels, as we have been accustomed to do. The Four Seasons reopens on November 1st, but the Four Seasons are a unique case because they have their own generating capacity anyway. So oftentimes, if we are not able to carry them, they will carry themselves at the Four Seasons. That was one of the redundancies that was built in where they are concerned. But the short answer is yes. The Van Samer International Airport, you're correct, that we have had some charter flights coming in. We expect that the small planes, the Air Sunshines and all of those are going to continue to come to Van Samer. The flights were charter flights because the airport was technically closed in the sense that the borders were closed. And so the flights had to get special permission to come. But now that the borders have reopened, we expect that they will resume a regular schedule as they would have done prior to COVID and to come and to do. We are in conversation now with others like Cape Air out of Puerto Rico to determine whether or not they will be returning. That will, of course, be largely about demand and what kind of demand they have for travel from those areas. So I don't anticipate that there will be any necessary fall off. Those that are going to the mainland United States may opt to fly via American Airlines, but bear in mind that the first American flight, as we advised today, will not occur until November 7th. So we're still some distance away. So if you want to travel between October 31st, when the borders reopen, and November 7th, then you have a week or so there that you may still want to use the Van Samer International Airport and fly over to Antigua or St. Martin and take a flight from there. So we will have to see how it goes, but I don't anticipate that there should be any significant fall off there. The small flights we expect should still be coming. Geothermal, at the end of this particular press conference, I'm having a teleconference with the individuals, NREI and the CDB, the Caribbean Development Bank, who has come on board in the geothermal project. I believe that we have made good progress. What we opted to do, Ms. Washington, is to renegotiate our contracts with NREI. We were able to renegotiate on the basis that geothermal is long overdue, that they were not able to honor the commitments that they had given, because under those commitments, we should have had geothermal power on Nevis available to the people of Nevis now since on or about December of 2015. So it's been many years, 5 years by my tally, that this has been in terms of delay. And so we were able to use that and to renegotiate. Once those negotiations are finalized, I certainly will be able to say more. And hopefully by the time we come to a budget for the NIA in the Nevis Island Assembly, which is to occur in the first week in December, we should be in a position to say more about that. CBI and our fair share, that is an ongoing conversation that we're having with the federal government to ensure, of course, that all the people of the Federation benefit from the Citizenship by Investment program. The approach that we've taken with the federal government is an approach of dialogue and continued discussions with them. It has been a difficult period in St. Kitts, as it has been in Nevis. We understand that. But the Citizenship by Investment program, we've also said, from the point in time when the SIDF was created, way back, I believe it was in 2010 or thereabouts, we have seen a lion's share of that. I mean, in fact, just to put it in perspective for you, I saw the recent audited reports from the SIDF, which were the reports for the periods, I think, between 2011 and 2013. And during that period, the SIDF took in well over $1 billion in revenue. Nevis got 2.19% of that money. And much of what Nevis got was by way of loan. So I just want that to sink in for a moment. Nevis has 1/3 of the population of the country. During that period, we got 2.19% of the money that came in. And a significant portion of that 2.19% was by way of loan. So when we are having this discussion, I think we are having this discussion from a very strong legal and moral standing to say that better needs to be done. And I have credited this government, this unity government, for having done better. But we would like this not to be based on who happens to be in government. We need a proper formula to ensure that the people of Nevis benefit just like the people of St. Kitts have benefited over all these years from citizenship by investment. The Treasury, I'm still having the nightmares. They haven't gone away because nothing significant has changed. We have struggled, but thank God, through the grace of God and through our bankers who have been very lenient and cooperative with us, we have kept the lights on and we've continued to pay our staff. I'm proud as I stand here today on the cusp of our borders reopening after 8 long months of our main engine tourism being closed, that we have not laid off a single individual from the public service and that all of our public servants continue to be paid on time. And that is why I continue to beg of them that they give of their best to the people of Nevis, because they are in a very privileged position, not enjoyed by many others who have been home with no income for the past 8 months. So I'm very proud of that. Can the government absorb all the Four Seasons workers? The answer is no. We simply do not have the capacity to do so. What we, however, are agitating for is that they get their severance payment in a timely way. And it is our hope, and through our discussions with Four Seasons, they've made it clear that as business improves, they will continue to take on people. But their business levels for their reopening on November 1st are not high enough for them to guarantee that they are going to employ people at that point. But we are hopeful that as we now ramp up our advertising, our promotions, that our hotels like the Four Seasons will be able to take back on staff that, of course, would have been terminated as a result of the long layoff. Let me, however, commend Four Seasons as a company. I thought they did an excellent job during this pandemic because they were able to pay their staff for the month of April in full, for the month of May in full, and I believe they made a 50% of their about payment in June, if memory serves, as well. And so staff were able to get 2.5 months payment even while the hotel was closed and did not have a single guest. And that compares very favorably with what we've seen even for other Four Seasons in the region where that was not afforded to their staff. And so they came to the end, they could not sustain it, and they had to lay off and terminate some individuals. And it is my hope that those individuals will get their severance pay packages and will avail themselves of some of the other opportunities that we have been pushing. I go back to the Small Business Initiative, for example, to say that the majority of the money is still there. There are options there for people to get into business. We are hopeful that some of these people will take advantage of these types of opportunities and get themselves in a position where they can earn. That is what we are hoping to do, and we'll continue to do our very best in that regard. The piece of the puzzle that has been missing in Nevis for some time is the border being closed. Once the borders remain closed, there was very little that we could do internally because of our small size, our small consumer base. We're optimistic now that the border is reopening, that things that we have been putting in place, such as agriculture, our ability to export food and locally grown food, our ability to produce more, feed ourselves, ability of some of our people to get involved in that, not just in agriculture, but in allied services such as agro-processing. We think that all of those are options that are now available to us that we must take advantage of. And the government is very, very proactive in that regard and will continue to be supportive. So we are not able to absorb all of these workers. Those that we can, we will. But of course, the government as well, let us understand that for the past several months, our revenues have been decimated. I'm going through the budget process now, the estimates process, and this year we're already off the pace by over $20 million, which for an economy the size of Nevis is significant. So we cannot continue to absorb persons, and we cannot continue to carry the weight of some of the stimulus that we had announced. I know some people are saying, well, why can't I continue to get this for free and that for free and the other for free? Well, it was free to you, but it was a cost, naturally, to the government and to the people. And all of our utilities, all of our statutory corporations have been crying out because NHLDC would have offered moratorium on loans, payment of loans for people with houses. NEVLEC would have offered discounts to people and a moratorium to some. You had the water department where water was now practically free. So all of these things come at a cost. And so we now have to seek to right the ship and start once again to say that we must sustain these initiatives as best as we can in the circumstances. Any other questions?
First question about complying businesses.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Yes, that is why we're having the last session today. We're saying for those businesses and establishments who did not avail themselves of the training that we provided, the sensitization that we provided, they ought to come to NEPAC today at 3:30 for the final session. That is the only way they will get the Nevis Travel Approved seal, which is critical if they're going to be able to open and offer their services to the visitors when they come and to the people of Nevis generally. So we are encouraging our people, because if they don't do that, then the necessary inspections when they go out, they will not be able to satisfy the inspection. So that is why we're encouraging our people, and I said so some weeks ago, as you rightly reminded me. I'm just trying my best here. Yes, the seal is a Nevis Travel Approved seal. And if you're in the tourism business and you want to have visitors, you want to have people at your restaurant, you have to have that seal of approval. Yes.
Good morning, Devon Cornelius, WinFM. I have a few questions here. My first question, are members of the public allowed at a hotel that serves as a quarantine site? Because we were told that those persons who will be quarantined at these facilities will be able to utilize some of the services and activities at the hotel. Also, members of the NIA cabinet agreed to take a pay cut due to the impact of the COVID-19 on the local economy. In your capacity as the Premier and the Minister of Finance, would you be able to give an update on that initiative? Also, is there a meeting scheduled for the CARICOM Foreign Affairs Ministers for today? Would you be able to give an update in terms of what is on the agenda and what are your expectations? Thank you.
Okay, let me start where you ended about the CARICOM Foreign Ministers. There's no meeting of CARICOM Foreign Ministers scheduled for today. Certainly no meeting of which I have been made aware that is happening today. The NIA members, the pay cut that we talked about for NIA cabinet members was for 3 months. That 3-month period has elapsed. And so they would have taken a 10% pay cut for the 3 months. I believe it was March, April, and May. Or was it April, May, and June? I think it was April, May, and June. Forgive me. So that cabinet members, their pay should have been restored in July. I, as the Premier and leader of cabinet, I took a 100% pay cut. I have not been paid in my capacity as Premier since March, and I have not taken any pay since that time. I have said that I will continue that as my own individual effort until such time as we get the all clear on the COVID-19 pandemic. So the sooner we get the all clear, the better it is for me. And that is why I'm working so hard to get us to that point. But I have not taken a salary as Premier since March, and so for the past 8 months, I have foregone my salary in that regard. Other members, as I said, took a 10% cut, and they would have taken that cut for the months of April, May, and June. Hotels that operate as quarantine sites, essentially, it's not that the hotel is operating as a quarantine site, other than a part of Wally. That's the only hotel that is operating as a quarantine site. I think you're perhaps talking about those hotels where people are allowed to come in for the first phase, where once they test negative prior to arrival, they're screened, they have no temperature, they have no symptoms, they are allowed to go to the hotel and have the run of the hotel, the use for the first 7 days. I think that's perhaps what you're talking about. The question that you asked is an excellent one, because many local people go to the same hotels, they go to the restaurants, etc., to eat, and it's a very common thing here. People celebrate their birthday, you name it. That question has been posed to the professionals, and we are told The last answer I got was that those hotels that could separate people would be allowed to continue to receive locals, meaning that if you had designated restaurants, for example, where only locals can go to, and others where the guests at the hotel can go to, then that would be a possibility. These are things, Mr. Cornelius, that we will have to see how they go. The reality is that it is only when the borders reopen and people start to come that these protocols are going to be tested. And along the way, we will have to adjust and continue to adjust to accommodate new things that develop, things that we may not have thought of, but that is the nature of COVID, and that is what we'll have to do. So my understanding is that locals will be allowed to go to those 6 hotels if they can be separated. In relation, of course, to the other hotels, locals can go to those. So if you want to go to Montpelier or Golden Rock or Oahu or Nisbet or Mount Nevis, you can go to those hotels as a local. You can go there to stay. Of course, our brothers and sisters in St. Kitts have been coming over in large numbers and spending weekends and longer periods over here at our hotels. Hamilton Beach, all of these are properties that you can go to as locals, and also you can go to if you're in the Caribbean bubble. And I spoke about that at the start. If you're an international visitor coming from London or coming from New York, then you can only go to the 6 hotels that were identified, and then locals will only be allowed to go there if those locals can be kept separate from those visitors. Dr. Nisbet, I have that right? Okay, thank you. That's why Dr. Nisbet is here today. She's my fact checker. All right, any other questions?
Good morning, Premier.
Good morning to you.
Glenn Bark from SK in Newsline. Now, Mr. Premier, there was a recent foreign ministers meeting with regards to Latin American countries and I believe CARICOM countries. There was a declaration that was signed to the effect that looking forward in the post-COVID-19 period, that growth and development will be looked at from a perspective of sustainability and resilience and so on. Did St. Kitts and Nevis sign that declaration? And if so, what does it mean for the country, really? And if not, why not? That's one. Secondly, some months ago, you mentioned on your, there was a circumstance in which the Prime Minister visited Four Seasons without your knowledge, and you did make it very clear that Nevis has a government and Nevis has an administration, and even for the sake of courtesy, you should have been informed. Have you had any conversations with the Prime Minister on this matter? Has the matter been resolved? If it persists, if it's the kind of behavior that persists, would it affect the kind of relationship that now exists between St. Kitts and Nevis from a governmental standpoint? In regards to agriculture, you mentioned that you want persons to buy local. There has been in the past, there has been a situation where the idea of banning imports was not being looked upon favorably. Is this a matter in relation to agreements with the World Trade Organization? And so if that's the case, we cannot ban imports. How do we then ensure that our local produce gets adequate market and our farmers, our backyard gardeners, can actually benefit from growing more food? That's it for now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bart, for your questions. Let me start where you left off about agriculture. You're correct that the idea of banning imports is difficult because we have obligations not only through the WTO, but also obligations on the CARICOM arrangements that we have. So, for example, we wouldn't be able to ban food from Trinidad or Jamaica, for example. How do we nevertheless help our local farmers by education? We continue to encourage, and I think that I'm using this bully pulpit to do so. I'm hoping the press will help me do so as well. People to buy local food. We know that it is better quality because we know what the inputs are. We know that we are helping our brother and sister in our local economy when we buy local. So we eat local, it is healthier for us. We buy local, we assist our local economy. And my hope would be that because we can build that momentum in relation to buying local and eating local, that there'll be no need for imports. And so the Rams and the Value Marts and them of the world will say, listen, I don't need to get tomatoes from Miami because I can get a regular supply of tomatoes right here. It, however, will require our farmers themselves to do their jobs. They must, of course, be able to ensure and assure Rams and those that, listen, if you need 1,000 pounds of tomatoes a week, you can get it. Because that has often been the problem, that our farming here has been so disorganized and sporadic that at one point you have a glut of watermelons, say, on the market, and then within 2 weeks, there are no watermelons at all available on the island. Now, if you're a supermarket offering watermelons, you know every time your customer comes weekly, they want that watermelon or cantaloupe. And so that is why we resort to importation. So one of the things we're seeking to do in Nevis is to stagger our crops in a way that the supply is continuous. With the shade house technology that is being utilized, it's also easier to do because, of course, these crops yield more and they're not out in the elements. In addition, with the investment that we are making in this new storage facility, it will mean that we can store so that those watermelons, the example I used, don't necessarily disappear within the 2 weeks because what you can't sell spoils. They can actually, the shelf life can be extended. So we will need to put in more infrastructure to ensure that our farmers have a regular pipeline coming through with products and that the consistency in production is there so that they can then guarantee the hotels, the restaurants, the supermarkets that they can get a regular supply. So we feel that that is what needs to be done with proper coordination. The idea is to convince those who are the significant importers that there's no need to import because they can get a better quality at a good price consistently right here on the island of Nevis or in the wider Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. So it is not at this point about banning, it's about changing people's behavior and thinking in relation to imported food as opposed to local food. Of course, we're still going to have some imported food. Things like flour and rice and all of that will still continue to be imported, milk. But we're thinking that in some key areas, fruits and vegetables are examples that we could do better here if we were to implement some of the things that we are in fact implementing. And we already in Nevis seen a turnaround in that regard. The PM and coming to Nevis, I think that that matter was discussed. I don't know that there's anything more really that I can add. That is something that happened. I think the public is aware of what happened and we have moved on beyond that. Will it happen in the future? I can't say. I'm not a soothsayer, but my hope will be that we conduct ourselves as we know we ought to conduct ourselves and we leave it there. In relation to ministers' meetings and foreign ministers, Mr. Bard, we've had a series of meetings. I have been involved now in meetings almost a daily basis with bilateral partners. This is an initiative that we have taken at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to reach out to our allies, and I'm doing 2 and sometimes 3 per day where I'm talking to allies. Yesterday I was able to speak to South Africa, for example. The day prior I was able to speak to India. I've spoken to Argentina. I've spoken I'm due to speak to the UK and other countries. So we have been reaching out to partners virtually. It is easier and cheaper now because we don't have to travel. So I'm enjoying that aspect of it. And we are able to reach whoever we want to reach that way. We have also had a Commonwealth ministers meeting, foreign ministers meeting. And the meeting that you referred to specifically was a meeting of CELAC, which is the Caribbean and Latin American Association, if you will, and foreign ministers. They had a foreign ministers meeting. Yes, St. Kitts and Nevis would have agreed to the declaration, and so we are parties to that. And the declaration, like many of the declarations that come out of these meetings, is really saying in an aspirational way what we would like to achieve. Out of the Commonwealth meeting, for example, a declaration would also have come that dealt with issues such as discrimination, and all of us lent our voices to that aspect of it as well. So these declarations, almost at every meeting that we have at the end, a declaration will come as a declaration from this particular summit that would have been convened. So our commitment is there. I think most of these meetings have been concerned with COVID and the response. Yesterday, when I spoke to India, they have had a very difficult time in India. I think India now has somewhere like over 7 million cases of COVID. So in terms of sharing the various experiences, I've engaged with Portugal where they've shared their experience. So in a way, it helps us as well to learn from each other, see where others have made mistakes so that here in St. Kitts and Nevis we could benefit by not making the same mistakes and to do what we need to do in a proper way. So that is the basis, and we will continue in that regard. Diplomacy now has changed because it's now largely virtual diplomacy that we engage in. But we have been, in many respects, ahead of the game. Because as foreign minister, for example, I embraced social media a long time ago. So in terms of Twitter, which is a space where there's a lot of diplomacy done, I'm very active there, and most of the foreign ministers are very active there as well. So we have different platforms in which we can engage and will continue to engage for the benefit of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. I hope I've answered your questions that you posed. Thank you, Mr. Bart.
Yeah, just 2 more questions. In connection to the one that I asked earlier about those persons who will be in quarantine at these hotel facilities, would they be given ID bracelets, or would they be apt to track those persons who will be quarantined at these facilities so that when the local population enter these hotels, you can identify whether this person is coming from a CARICOM bubble or international community? Also, you did mention some of the countries that would participate in the CARICOM bubble when we reopen on Saturday. For countries such as the BVI that to date has no active cases, would they become a part of the CARICOM bubble, and would they be allowed to travel to St. Kitts and Nevis?
Okay, Mr. Cornelius, as I said at the start, the countries that I've listed are the countries that are currently included, but countries can be added or taken out as circumstances change. For example, the countries, again, for sake of clarity, currently included are Anguilla, Antigua, Barbuda, Barbados, Dominica, Grenada, Montserrat, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines. If tomorrow, for example, God forbid, there's a spike in cases in St. Lucia or in Antigua, we may act quickly to remove them from the bubble. If equally we see the BVI, the USVI, or anywhere else that there's no community spread and low risk, then they may be added to the bubble. So I can't tell you definitively that the BVI will be included in the bubble. That will be a matter for the task force and the recommendations that will come. I can only tell you what is the current situation, and who knows, by the time Saturday comes, we may get a new list, because this thing is so fluid that the situation really keeps changing almost day to day. So all I was sharing was who are currently included in that bubble. The question of people having some kind of identifying band or something of that nature, remember I said that as my understanding at this point is that local people will not be mingling with guests who are vacationing in place at any of the 6 hotels that are designated in the first phase for purposes of reopening. So for those of those 6 hotels who cannot provide facilities where our local population are separated from the guests, then they will not be accommodated. So there will be no issue, for example, of group of people at the lobby at Four Seasons, and the people down there trying to figure out, well, who is local and who is an international guest, because there should be no commingling of people in that way. That is my understanding. In relation to identification, remember I said at the outset that you'll be required to download an app. And part of that app, I'm advised, is geofencing, I think they call it. That is what I'm told. So that the app will allow those administering it to track individuals in terms of their movements and to ensure that individuals are not breaching the quarantine restrictions. All of those hotel properties will as well have security to ensure that people do not migrate beyond the boundaries of the property that they're on. Dr. Nisbet, I have that right? Yes. Oh, and I'm told there'll now be a bracelet as well, right? I know that the last conversation I had, they were unsure if the bracelet would be ready, but...
Well, it would be color-coded bracelets to identify a local versus an international.
Okay. So the bracelet then would be a color-coded bracelet, I'm being told, which is not quite what I was thinking when I said bracelet. I thought it was a tracking device. So that is the position as we move forward in terms of what we can expect October 31st and continuing.
Mr. Premier, about 2 weeks ago, you made a passionate appeal to persons, young people in particular, to be responsible in their behavior. It met with some pushback in some areas on social media. Others felt it was right on the mark, if I might use the phrase on the mark. However, there are other aspects to be considered in this whole idea of being responsible, and we talk about issues of child abuse, for example, about issues of parenting, bad parenting, non-existent parenting. We talk about situation of statutory rape and all those long-term consequences. How do you factor those issues into that idea of responsibility if you were to include those aspects in the conversation? I have another question. I'll come back later.
Well, Mr. Bart, how do we include them? We include them. I mean, meaning that they're all part and parcel of an overall conversation. I marveled at the fact that my comments created such a sensation because I didn't think that I said anything that people didn't already know. I didn't think I said anything that was controversial. But I recognize as a politician and as somebody in a leadership position at this point on the island that we have shied away from these types of topics because you do understand that when you engage, some people might get upset. But I have felt that leadership has to lead. And part of our role has to be to use the bully pulpit we have, not only to tell people the nice things they want to hear, but also to tell people some hard truths which they may not want to hear. And one of those hard truths is that our people continue to behave in some areas irresponsibly. I mentioned, for example, taking control of our own health. There are people here who the only time they go to the doctor is when they feel sick, and then they're told, oh my goodness, you have stage this cancer, and then you hear the flurry now of wanting money, you need to go overseas, you need to be medevaced, you need this, and hundreds of thousands of dollars need to be found. When you say to people every day, please go and do your pap smear, please go and do your mammogram, please go and do your prostate screening, all of which is free, certainly in relation to the pap smear and the prostate screening. Mammograms are free, Doc? Mammograms aren't free, but those others are free, right? So you talk about people who have children here, there, and everywhere. Men in particular who feel that it is their right to get as many children as they can without regard to how those children are going to be supported. When we have contraceptives that are available, again, for free. And I share the experience all the time that a gentleman came to me once asking for some assistance because the bailiff looking for him. He ain't paying child support. And I was sympathetic, but used the opportunity to have a conversation with him, to ascertain from him, how did you find yourself in this situation? Thinking that perhaps he's out of work, he's fallen on hard times, only to learn that the man had 6 children from 6 different women. And his theory on life was that he did that because women like to tell lies and like to say he was not their man. So that is why he did what he did, so he has proof that he was with this particular female. Now we can debate all day, all night about why anybody needs proof that he was with a particular female. But in his mind, having a child was evidence that he had had a relationship with that female. That was his motivating force. But I now must put my hand in my pocket to rescue him from the bailiff. So I spoke to him and I said to him that I have 2 children. And I tried to limit myself to 2 because I thought that that is what I could afford. Here he was having 6 and bailiff looking for him. But the reason why he had 6 from 6 different women was as he explained it to me. So I then said to him, you know that at the clinics here, Nevis, etc., the health promotion unit, you get free condoms. The man stormed out, tell me I don't respect poor people. No, we must talk about these things. And I'm not going to shy away because some had hurt feelings. We must talk about these things. And perhaps when the Premier speaks, more people might listen. I don't know. And if it generated some controversy, I'm not sure why, but perhaps it's a good thing because see, you've come this morning to ask me about it again. And people were talking about it. We cannot get to the type of society we need if we continue to coddle everybody, and when people do things that we know they shouldn't do and that they know they shouldn't do, we tell them they're right. So I hear people saying, oh, a child is a gift from God and children are a blessing. That is true. But with that blessing comes a responsibility. And that is all I'm saying to people. If you're going to decide to go down a particular road and engage in particular activity, sometimes I talk to people, you know, they tell me, a big man, I'm a big woman, you're telling me, well, that's okay. But if you're a big man or a big woman, be a big man or a big woman when your responsibility comes. You can't be a big man or a big woman when you're having the fun. But then when the baby comes now, the baby is somebody else's responsibility. And people don't like to hear these things because our people somehow have got to a point where you must tell them what they want to hear. Make them feel good. Tell them that their irresponsible behavior is okay. It's not your fault. Some of the commentary that I saw, people want to take me back to slavery and say that this is a legacy of slavery. Well, I tell them slavery over 200 years. So at what point, with all the education that we've invested in, all the advances in healthcare and in technology, at what point does that kick in? Or we still go back 200 years to say that that is what the colonial master did to us, and therefore, somehow, that men siring 10 and 15 children with no means and no intention to support any of them, that is a throwback to 200 years ago. I don't accept that. Yes, there are problems in the society. Yes, there are things that happen that are outside the control of persons. Yes, there are poor people who are taken advantage of, including women. But we have to also drill into our people's heads that where you have a choice, make or seek to make the right choice. Where you're going to take a decision, understand that that decision might have consequences. And as a result of that, we hope you will make better decisions, because poor choices and poor decisions and irresponsible behavior has an impact for the entire community. It is not, as some try to say to it, that I am preaching to people or I am condescending. I am speaking truth and facts and asking people to listen. If you don't like it because I'm the messenger, that's okay too. Perhaps somebody else will hear me and give you a message in a different way that you will like. Even the way I expressed the message, because I resorted to Nivision vernacular, and that seemed to have offended some people. They said the Premier mustn't talk bad like that. Well, that's my culture. If I said it colloquially, I'm sure people understood what I was talking about. But the point that I was making, and I'm happy you've raised it, is that we, all of us, have an obligation to talk about these issues. There are too many social issues that are swept under the rug in our country. You mentioned some: child abuse, statutory rape, and everybody shy away. Let's not talk about these things because they are unpleasant, but they are unpleasant facts of life in our community. And you can never deal with a problem by ignoring it. You must always deal with a problem by being open about it and being able to discuss it. And that is all that I sought to do. And this time around it created some controversy, but that was not the intention. The intention was to engage in an ongoing conversation about our people trying to be responsible. All of us, Mr. Bart, have had an opportunity in our lives where we could have gone this way or we could have gone that way. All of us. All of us have the opportunity when we earn, when you make your earnings from your business, and the other members of the press here get their earnings from their various press rooms and businesses that they work for. They have choices. So if I earn my money this month and I decide I get paid Friday, my first stop is the little house down the road there. I'm going to enjoy myself. I'm going to have a case or two of Guinness with my boys. I'm going to drink some this and that and whatever. And by the time I get home, what was maybe $600 for the week is now down to $350 because $250 of it I've already gone and frittered away. Then I go home now, and food is needed in the house. Neglect to pay. Water to pay. My baby is sick, needs to go to the doctor. Now I start to cry out. I say, oh, I don't have no money. Somebody else now must come to my rescue. We must talk about these things. Because all of us, you and I, have the same opportunity to choose. I made a comment some time ago, created a furor in the country, and you know, the comment was something that my elderly Aunt Elise of blessed memory used to tell me as a little boy: save something for a rainy day. Any of you in this room here who say you've never heard that would perhaps not be telling the truth. Because all of our forebears used to tell us, make sure you save a penny for a rainy day. I say so, and all kinds of people start to cuss. Oh, that's easy for you to say, you got money. Poor people can't save. Poor people can't save? I don't even know that we have the level of poverty now that we used to have when I was a boy. Where people had no electricity, no had no running water, walk barefoot, go to school. That level of poverty, in my respectful view, doesn't exist on that scale today as it did then. And back then I remember my old aunt used to have her head tie. You know what the head tie is, Mr. Bart? And in the corner of the head tie, a little something there. And when a celebration comes, a little birthday or something, you take out a 25 cents, a dollar, whatever they say, this for you for your birthday. People who had nothing were still able to put aside a little penny for a rainy day. And that was the nature of things. We had institutions here started like the cooperative bank were based on that type of principle, that people would save. Now you talk to people and their attitude is that every penny I make, I must spend. If I get paid $600 on a Friday afternoon, matter of fact, some of them try to spend $8 when they only earn $6. And when you say to people this is irresponsible, some of us are afraid to say so because then you get abused and they say, oh, you can't tell me what to do, me work with my money. But it's all about encouraging our people to do the responsible thing. So I don't think that it's a theme that I will resile from. I think it is something that's important. I'm told that my language was perhaps a little too inelegant, and so I will need to look at that. But the truth is that the message is what I want people to focus on. And to run away from this notion that Mr. Bart just buy a car, and I must buy one too because I'm competing with Mr. Bart. We don't know if Mr. Bart won the lotto. We don't know how Mr. Bart got his car. And too many of us are watching what others are doing and trying to pattern ourselves off other people like we're in some race when we know we don't have the financial ability to do so. You and I, Mr. Bart, would come from a generation where you saved up to do what you wanted to do. You buy a little car, you save, you save. After 5 years or so, you have what it takes to make the down payment. We now seem to have a generation which says, I want it today. I'm not going to save, I'm not going to do anything, I want it today. And if I have a credit card or however thing, I get it so, and then you run yourselves into problem. And so that is all we're asking, for people to exercise responsibility in all areas, financially, sexually, socially, in every area, that they be responsible. And that, I think, is a message that we may express in different ways, but a message that is timeless, and one that we should continue jointly to speak about at every chance that we get.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Premier. LK Hewlett, Department of Information. Frank Comito, who is the CEO of the Caribbean Tourism and Hotel Association, recently said that there is an optimistic outlook in terms of tourism for 2021. They're referring to the era as, well, post-COVID, but I don't know who would have said that COVID would be over in 2021, because that's not the indications that we're seeing. They're saying that hotel occupancy levels are slightly above what they had expected, and, you know, they expect people to be coming back to the Caribbean. What indication have you been getting from the tourism operators in Nevis with regard to maybe early bookings and that kind of thing? And also, I know the budget meetings, I don't know if the NIA has begun its budget meetings. Considering the decimation of the revenue for the better part of 2020, what does 2021 look like for the NIA financially?
Thank you very much. Excellent questions. In relation to the tourism sector, the early indications are that they're too early to really tell us much of what we can expect next year. The Four Seasons, for example, has said to us that they were unable to ramp up their promotions and advertising because, of course, we did not know until rather late when the opening was going to be. And absent a date for reopening, it was difficult to promote. The airlines were saying the same thing, that absent a date for reopening, they couldn't load a flight. So sometimes even people who were interested in coming, they were saying, well, how am I going to get there, and where am I going to stay? So as a consequence, we recognize that we had some difficulties, unavoidable. I'm not ascribing blame, because I think that all of us were struggling with the right approach in relation to this. The Prime Minister ultimately announced October 31st, and that is the point at which people now got into gear. And so the early bookings, I'm told, aren't particularly good because of the lateness of that announcement. However, we are hopeful that as the island reopens, and as, of course, people now get accustomed to the idea that the island will be open, as the protocols are streamlined and everybody understands what is required, as we talk about it more so that we educate the populace and those traveling what is required here, that we expect that more people will come, because we are being told that there is what is called a pent-up demand, and that people who have been locked up for some time want now to get away. The thing that is of value to us is the very thing we're trying to protect. That is that St. Kitts Nevis has handled the COVID pandemic in such a way that we've had few cases, no hospitalization, no deaths, and even the CDC has put us on low risk for COVID. What that means, therefore, is that we will be in a position to say to potential visitors that we are a safe destination to visit. And so that is the hope, that the way that we've handled COVID will actually now pay dividends in terms of people who are willing to come, especially those who are willing to come for extended stays. Those homeowners are those who want to just come and stay here for a year, for 6 months, as the case may be, that they may choose to come here simply because we are safe as a destination. So the numbers at this stage, as we are having this press conference, are not particularly encouraging, but we have had, for example, from Paradise Beach, the report that they have excellent bookings for December. And so they expect a ramp up and even to be full by the time December comes around. So we are hopeful that the high season for us is always starts sort of about the 10th of December, 15th of December, and then runs. That's where we make the maximum money from tourism on the island. We are hopeful that we still have enough time to salvage that and have some quality of a season going forward. Now, I will say that Nevis has always been unique in what it offers. It's a small jurisdiction. It has always catered to the higher end of the market. It has always catered to lower numbers, higher yield. That has been our model. I have said in many a forum that we prefer to have 100 guests in Nevis paying $1,000 a night than having 1,000 guests paying $100 a night. Some say the math is the same. I assure you the math is not the same in terms of impact, in terms of spend. And so Nevis has always catered to the higher end of the market in smaller, bespoke properties. Some of our properties, as you know, only have maybe 14 rooms, 17 rooms. The Four Seasons is the largest with, I think, 196 rooms or thereabouts. But interestingly enough, that model, which some have criticized, because I have in many public appearance been told that Nevis needs to move to a mass tourism model. They want to see the cruise ship dock, and they want to see the investment in that, and the 4 and 5 big ships. Particularly taxi drivers accost me all the time and say, look over at St. Kitts, 4 ships over there today, none in Nevis. But I believe that COVID has now taught us that the model that we have might well prove to be most beneficial now. Because if we're not going to see the high numbers and the mass tourism coming back immediately, the properties and the jurisdictions that offer what we offer might be most appealing to people coming in. Because they know when they're here, they're not going to have thousands of people on the beach with them. They know that we're coming to a smaller jurisdiction where the numbers are tightly controlled because of our capacity. So I think that that is some value. I think those jurisdictions that rely very heavily on cruise are probably going to suffer more than those like ours that rely very heavily on stay-over visitors. So we're going to have to see what happens and whether Mr. Nieto's prediction prove accurate. I do believe there's pent-up demand because, for example, the Bahamas, when they opened, Four Seasons is telling me that their hotel in the Bahamas, they actually went in the Bahamas to, I think, over 50% occupancy almost immediately. Of course, then they had COVID cases, and then Bahamas had to shut down again. So it is all about now how we manage it. And I'm asking all of you to help pray for us, because God will have to be with us as we open our borders and as we move forward. We have tried our best. Dr. Nisbet and her team have been working non-stop. We have done the best that we can, but the reality is that it is only when the borders open we will know. And we will have, therefore, a period, testing period of a few weeks to see whether or not this is working. The budget discussions are ongoing. As a matter of fact, when I leave here, I go directly to the continuation of those budget discussions. Short answer to you, Ms. Hewlett, is that it is extremely difficult in the best of times to plan a budget. Now, with our revenue decimated, it is even more difficult. I am telling you now that we will have a COVID budget. And what that means really is that we will have to do what we need to do and not what we want to do. We will try to be as innovative as we can. We will try to save as much as we can in the areas that we can. Our primary commitment in this budget will be to our public servants to ensure that they continue to be paid, to our critical sectors such as health and education. And I think that those who, for example, have been clamoring for their road to be fixed and they want better roads and that kind of thing, I think that those are the items that we will perhaps put a hold on. Now, there's a theory that when there's a recession, as we are in now, that the way you do is to spend yourself out of the recession. There's a theory that government, it is that time that government must engage in spending. Well, that is for governments that have something to spend. We don't have that luxury. And so we have instead to be prudent about what we do, to conserve the little that we have, and to ensure that it goes as far as we can. So that is a very delicate process in which we are now engaged in terms of our budget and our budget analysis, and we're guided in that process by our technical team at the Ministry of Finance here on the island of Nevis.
A few weeks ago, Mr. Premier, I read an article that indicated that a strange phenomenon was occurring in the COVID-19 period, in which Nevis was getting a huge amount of sales of condominiums or properties, mainly from persons who were trying to invest in a place where they thought it was relatively safe as a means of getting away in this COVID-19 period, or when it was free for them to travel. What have you been hearing about that? This was an article that was written in one of the international magazines, and I would like to know if from our end, have you been hearing anything like that? The other thing, Mr. Premier, is that some weeks ago also there was an incident that occurred, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it might have been in the United Kingdom, in which a couple from the Middle East carrying a passport identified as St. Christopher and Nevis, or passports identified as St. Christopher and Nevis's passports, but were quickly found out to be fraudulent. Were there any, on the diplomatic front, were there any correspondence, communications with regards to this particular incident?
Mr. Bart, thank you. On the issue of a forged passport, obviously anyone anywhere in the world can forge a document. For those who would have tried to malign the good name of St. Kitts and Nevis by forging our passport, I'm happy that they were found, and no doubt whatever the law of the land that they found themselves in would take effect. I'm not aware that there was any recourse to us because the document was not issued by us. And so whoever they got the document from, or whether they forged or created it themselves, there was no recourse to us, so far as I'm aware. I can only speak for Foreign Affairs. I do not know if there was any recourse to national security. Of course, that is a ministry for which the Prime Minister is responsible. But I'm not aware that there was anything other than this media report. But it's like saying they're forged EC dollar bills. Is there any report to us about that? I think that if that is the case, then you prosecute those individuals for violating your law, wherever they're found with it, and that's a matter for them. So I am not aware of anything in that regard. You talk about sales in real estate. I have not seen that report, but I would be very happy if that is in fact what is happening. I can tell you that as part of our response to COVID, we have met with realtors on the island of Nevis. We have heard them. We have, in response to their entreaties, we have waived alien landholding license fees. Alien landholding license fees are levied at a rate of 10% of the value of the property that is being sold, and any non-national buying property outside CARICOM or OECS, for which we have a special arrangement, any non-national would have to pay that 10%. The realtors felt that if we waive that fee for a short period, that might help move real estate, and we acceded to that. So I do not know if that might have assisted, because that would mean that your property purchase is immediately 10% cheaper than it was because of the waiver of those fees. We have also, of course, in relation to construction, both new construction and renovations, granted some very generous concessions that, again, they say is spurring construction activity of new villas, new homes, and encouraging persons. They must start that construction by December 31st. That was the understanding, and that was the policy that we put in place. In addition, I'm aware that the Cabinet has taken a decision at the federal level to ensure that some sales of real estate over a certain value, being $400,000 US, will qualify the purchasers for citizenship by investment. That is something that was a proposal that came out of that same meeting. The Prime Minister and the Cabinet in St. Kitts were amenable, and that is something, no doubt, that the Prime Minister will speak more about in the days and weeks ahead. But that is another initiative. So all of those may well be spurring, we hope, construction activity and real estate activity, because real estate is an important part of the economic matrix for the island of Nevis. So those are some initiatives, but I am not privy to the particular report that you spoke about. And when I spoke to the realtors, while they did say that business was not terrible, that it could be better, and they had asked for some of these things to be done to make it better. We have responded positively, and it is our hope that in fact, it has got better for them. I will know more by the time I come to a budget in December, what the numbers look like.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Mr. Premier.
Good afternoon.
Jarvis Brown from Vaughan Radio. Just two questions, sir. In addition to the flight dates being announced for next month, are there any exact dates for cruise ships coming into Nevis? And the second question is, what is your view, as you made mention with regards to the $5 million at Sidu, as Premier of Nevis, as to why persons are not taking advantage of the $5 million at that institution, sir? And those are my two questions. Thank you very much.
Why people are not taking advantage, I don't know. I can't answer that. But I will continue to tell people to take advantage, that it's available. You might be surprised that we have this press conference every month. I have a radio program every week. I'm very active on social media. I'm continually trying to communicate. But a lot of people still will tell you they didn't know, that they never heard about that. So that might be a factor. So we continue to encourage our people to take advantage of these opportunities. And this $5 million, as I said, is based on what I last heard, the majority of it is still available. So I'm hopeful that through this rostrum, through this medium, and through the media outlets, that we can continue to encourage our women and our youth to take advantage of this opportunity to get seed financing for their various businesses. Need to be to start a business. And while I recognize that, the reason we set the ceiling at 100,000 EC was to try to get more people into the net. So that was what we were seeking to do in that regard. So we continue to encourage persons. Flight dates, yes, have been announced. You asked about cruise. That's an ongoing conversation. I would hope to come back to you. I do know that some smaller cruise ships that would come have asked for special permission to come and have asked for some protocols associated with that. The larger cruise ships, I am doubtful, will be back this season. But as I said, we are still working on what the protocols will look like for cruises if they do come. Cruises, in a way, can actually be safe, meaning that if they come, for example, there's one small ship that I know comes and goes to Crishy Beach, here in Nevis, for example. So they don't interact with anybody on the island. They come in, they bring in their supplies, they're on the beach, and that is the extent of their interaction with the island. The difficulty is going to be, of course, if they want to take a taxi and do an island tour and that kind of thing. That is where the problems are going to arise. And if, of course, as we have said, Port Zante, if the big ships are going to come in and then thousands of people are walking all about Bastille, that is going to be the problem. So I think if we see anything in the initial phases, it probably will be the very small ships that we can control in a more effective way. But for now, that is still at the level of a discussion, and the health task force and the COVID task force, and the cabinet will have to consider what those protocols might look like as we try to develop them. So we have no dates. The long and short is we have no dates as yet for cruise. Anything further? No? Okay. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being here. Dr. Nisbet, thank you much for being here. You didn't come up to say anything, but you nodded at points, so I know I was on the right track. So thank you very much. Thank you to NTV and to the other media houses, Vaughan Radio, of course, for being here. We are very grateful, and we hope to have another engagement in another month or so. Thank you, and God bless you.